right, welcome to what was originally our May Somerville Avenue construction meeting, which is now happening in July. My name is Jesse Moose. I'm the construction liaison for the city of Somerville. I work out of the engineering office. With me tonight are some of my colleagues. Dan Amlin, project manager out of engineering. I have Georgie Silveria, our environmental health coordinator. Courtney Kirk, our streetscape and public space planner. And Erica Mays, construction and public information officer. We are also joined by some of our elected officials tonight. First, Ben Ewan-Campen, Ward 3 City Councilor. J.T. Scott, Ward 2 City Councilor. Mary Jo Rossetti, City Councilor at large. And all the way in the back, hiding, City Councilor Wilma Vaugh at large. So who here attended our last meeting in October? Oh, fair amount of you, that's excellent. So what we're going to talk about is progress that was made from October to basically today. We're going to go over we're going to go over the project overview, the recent construction progress, upcoming construction work zones, section 1C and 1D, the traffic impacts to Union Square of those work zones, and the communication outreach and engagement that we're doing. But before we go into all that, we're going to bring up Georgie Silveria, our environmental health coordinator, to talk about how to deal with rodent activity in Union Square. Give it away. Thanks, Georgie.
Thanks, Jesse. So as he said, my name is Georgie Silveira. I'm the city's environmental health coordinator in the Health and Human Services Department. Currently, my work focuses on rodent control and management, and so I'm just going to talk really quick about the state of rodent control kind of around the project, as well as some resources that the city might have for people who are experiencing rodent activity or dispersal in the area kind of this project. To kind of give an overview of that. So the Somerville Ave project since day one has had a contracted pest control company walking the site weekly, managing and placing those black plastic boxes that I'm sure that you've seen all over the place. Those actually contain a rodent poison, and they're sort of placed strategically to try to mitigate any dispersal or activity that might be due to the ground disruptions or vibrations that are being caused by this project. And so, they have sort of weekly logs that I take a look at, and I'm sure other people in the city take a look at, like noting areas of higher activity. They're doing a good job of targeting those, keeping track of them week to week. And so there is a plan in place to try to mitigate any of these effects that might be caused by this project. And the city is also doing some things on a wider scale to address the rodent activity. Number one, hiring me. So I've been with the city since January, and my job has been dedicated to just looking at this issue, trying to learn more about rats in Somerville, learn about what Somerville is doing about rats, and how to sort of make those two things more effective and work together. We just finished up a population survey in the East Somerville area. A little plug, I'll be doing a presentation of the results of that, and then next steps that the city will be taking based on the data that we got from that on August 7th. I'll be hanging around after the meeting, so if you have more questions about that, please let me know. We also, can't read that. We're also working on rolling out some new education initiatives based on what we found from the survey, as well as what I've kind of found based on what the city's already doing, and sort of improving the baiting that's already been done in the city. And so this is kind of the main way that we've been tracking rat activity in the city. You can see from 2017 to 18, there's a huge spike in reports kind of in the Union Square area, and that's kind of continued through what we can see through 2018. Rat activity before that was kind of concentrated more around the Broadway, East Somerville, Ward 1 kind of area, but we're seeing more activity in Ward 2, and so we'll be directing some new resources and initiatives to that area as well. And so here's kind of the main things that you can do as a resident in the city or as a property owner. The biggest thing is to call 311 because we don't know if rats are in an area unless someone lets us know. And so by reporting, that helps me in my work as well as other city helps me and my work as well as other city departments such as inspectional services or our Department of Public Works more effectively direct our resources. Also, just make sure you're kind of keeping an eye out for rats. Look at your own property for evidence. The city has some rodent education resources. If you go to somervillema.gov/rodent control, there's some good videos on there, the city's pamphlet about rodent education, and there are lots of ways that you can take action. There's some tips on the city website about how to prevent or manage activity that you're seeing. And if it kind of gets to the point that you need to look into a professional, there's also some resources about how to find a good one as well. And the city does have a program for owner-occupied properties that provides free baiting assistance to these properties. So please see me afterwards if you have any questions about what that program is, or how to sign up for it. We know that this is a really stressful and important issue that's only growing in importance in the city, and so we're trying to direct our resources most effectively to help the community come together and manage the issue. So yeah, please let me know if you have any questions afterwards. Thank you so much.
All right, so two other people I wanted to introduce. Rachel Burkhardt from WSP, she's a project engineer. And Megan Nowak is from Barletta. They are the construction company that you see out there every day. But now I'm going to turn it over to our project manager, Dan Amlin. And if you're wondering if we coordinated today, the answer is yes.
Small victory time. So real quick before I get into this, I just want to pull all this up. All right, good evening, everyone. As Jesse mentioned and introduced me, my name's Dan Amlin. I'm the project manager for the project happening right outside. I started with the city last August, so I'm just coming up on my first year here with the city, and the good news is I'm still here. With that being said, I know a lot of the people in the room are familiar faces. You've all seen this slide. Most of you have. So my one question is, for the people who are here tonight, who hasn't seen this? Okay. What this slide is showing you is a very broad overview of this entire project. That's a lot to put into one little graphic. So as we progress through this evening's presentation, obviously we'll go into a little bit more depth, but for those who haven't seen this, and a quick background, the purpose of this project is really twofold. The first being, it's the first portion of the city's overall goal to separate sewer and stormwater. For over 100 years, a lot of our city's sewer lines are actually combined with stormwater, which is an old, antiquated practice that's no longer acceptable these days. So that being said, this project's just a little under $50 million, and I mentioned it's just a small portion. There are other future projects that will mesh into this project once it's complete that will help the city realize that goal of having stormwater and sanitary separated. So that being said, the purple line behind me is a new box culvert 14 feet wide by 6 feet tall. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it can handle up to 800 million gallons of water a day. It's a very long, tedious process to get each one of these sections of this overall box culvert installed, in which I can get into more detail on the next slide. But it's a 3-year project, and as of today, we're just about 35% complete, with about another year and a half, 2 years remaining. The second portion of this project is for streetscape. What's in a name? Somerville Avenue Utility and Streetscape Design. So east of Prospect Street, between Prospect and Medford, is going to be a big focus of what our streetscape design is going to look like. We'll have separated bike lanes. I think 52 new trees, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of bioretention planting beds and gardens. We'll also have silvicels, which is it's almost like a Lego or a building block that helps tree roots underneath the sidewalk. So before we get to that point, these will be getting installed with the hope that our trees can flourish and grow and hopefully survive a very long time and hopefully a lot longer than anyone in this room. So that being said, let me switch to the next slide. So again, I'm sure a lot of you have seen this slide before. This is a cross-section of what our box culvert looks like amongst other existing utilities and proposed utilities that we're performing under this project. So in the middle there, in the big yellow rectangle, that's what our box looks like. For any of those who have driven through Union Square, walked, biked, and just within the past few weeks, you've seen a lot of these get installed. Each section is about 5 to 10 feet. It varies. Knowing that we're going roughly about a mile, you can imagine how long that would take. The good news is, given the recent work we've had over the past 2 months, we're progressing at a pace we all would have expected, and dare I say, quicker. Time will tell. In this graphic behind me, you'll see the existing sewer line. It's a 72-inch brick. Actually, up at Union Square, it's about 60 inches, and by the time our sewer gets to McGrath Highway, it's about 96 inches. So it increases in size, obviously large enough for a person to walk through. And it's a sewer system that's been in place for roughly 120 years. It's a very long time. And the good news is it's in remarkable condition. And in order to preserve the condition of this pipe, we actually have previously installed over, I believe it was last December, a pipe liner. It's essentially a big sock that gets blown up and cured to the inside of the pipe, which not only reinforces it, but it prevents any future damage from occurring. Other utilities involved in this project, we have new electrical lines, new gas lines and services, new water mains. Again, our existing water mains that we're replacing under this project are about 110, 120 years old. Old iron pipes that have since tuberculated, and it's time for an upgrade. Lastly, I do want to mention, that's all right, you stay in there. Aside from our sewer in the center of the road, 60 inches up to 96 inches, we have 2 additional sewers in the sidewalks, north and south. So as you could all imagine, Somerville Ave is a very congested corridor for underground utilities. So that's kind of a broad project overview. At this point, what I'd like to have is Rachel come present to you all here what the progress has been since we started our work zone in Union Square. And if many of you remember, that was early February. We've just about completed that area, minus a small work zone we have now. But the good news is we were able to actually open up traffic through Union Square a lot sooner than we had hoped and anticipated. So with that good news, I'm going to pass it off to Rachel. She's going to describe the work that took place in Union Square, describe the functionality of the graphic behind me, and then we'll get into some pictures to show you what that actually looks like in real life. So with that being said, here's Rachel Burkhart, WSP, our city's consultant. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dan. So I think a lot of people do know us and what we've done. We've done the original design for this project here, put together plans and specifications on what needs to be constructed. And then in addition, we are also right now overseeing the construction. So I have 4 full-time staff members who are out in the field and in the office just tracking all the construction work that's been going on, making sure that our contractor, Barletta, is doing everything according to the plans and specs and answering any questions that they run into in the field. So that being said, as everyone probably noticed up in the Union Square for a number of months there, starting around February, we had a big hole that gradually opened up and eventually filled back in. So what's in that hole here? So this is a diagram of it here, and it's probably one of the most complicated parts of sewers and drains in the city here. We have 4 pipes coming in from Bow Street and Somerville Avenue. Some are storm and some are combined, and some are shades of things in between here. The city has a lot of shades of different levels of combined sewers. Some are more sewer, some of them more drain. But anyway, they come in from the left, and on the top of the 2 big drains from Bow Street and Somerville Avenue, and then on the bottom is a circle there, and it says 36 inch, so there's actually 2 pipes that come together and come and do that. So that was the original pipes. The 66, folks might remember, I think it's probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, that was constructed up Somerville Avenue from near Porter Square down to the square. They put that pipe in there. The other one, the 51, you probably won't remember because it was put in around 1900 or so. So that's still probably a little bit before most people's time. So anyway, in this particular thing here, what we have is this is kind of like a two-level freeway interchange between sewers and drains. So water can come into structures and go in different directions depending on where we want it to go and depending on the stages of, as Dan mentioned, there's a lot of things going on upstream here. We need to continue doing more separation upstream, and then we can get more and more water. On the right here, you see on the top is the yellow is the big box that we're putting in. So that's where the cleaner stormwater is going to go into that, because eventually it'll go out to the Charles River. The other purple line there goes through the old combined sewers, and that goes out to the treatment plant on Deer Island. So this is the work that's been going on over time, and I think we have some pictures of that here. Yeah. So. This is the first one here is just showing some of the excavations. Kind of in the lower right, you can see some of the pieces there. That one that's being placed there is kind of the shape of a home plate there, and it's some of the diversion structures. And in the lower left is also another diversion structure, and you can see where the worker is. One box is going in that direction, and then in the lower right of that picture, another pipe would be going in the other. So this is kind of like the off-ramps on the freeway here. And in fact, the pipe coming out of this goes over another pipe going underneath it. So this is one of the more complicated parts of that here. So just I guess we continue on with a few things. So this is just an overview here. You know, it looks like chaos, but everything came together exactly according to the plans here. It just took a little bit. It's like putting the jigsaw puzzle together and all. So there's a lot of things. Not everyone might have seen all the things that went into the hole there, but you can, you know. And then I think these are some. Once a month we have a drone fly over the site here. So this shows the stages of things. So in February, before the work was done, this is what the roadways look like. And then as we continue on here, we can see in March we're starting to excavate. And then as we get into April, now we start to have a real hole in the ground here, but not too much in the hole yet. And then we get into May, and lo and behold, we got most of the structures in, and now we're coming back out of the hole and backfilling. And then you can see here in June, we were able to restore the roadways here through that area. Not completely, because we still have a connection that we still need to make in the area, but we tried to get at least as much restored as possible. We got the bike lane going into the square, and you can see the bicyclist over here. We now have widened that out, and we have a bike lane in that area as well. So that's about where we are with that. And then I think we have some more. So these are some of the other things that have been going on while we've been doing this here. You may have noticed up and down the street. On the lower left, there were in places, not everywhere. We thought most of it was taken out, but we found places where it was. Then we found places where the trolley track hadn't been taken out. But the trolley tracks go back to the late 1800s, and that used to be where was the 87 trolley instead of the 87 bus that you would take. And it used to come from Leechmere for a while, and at one time it all went to Scully Square. So you wouldn't have to change at one point on that. So that is being removed so that we can put in the box culvert. Down below we're mentioning the water pipes and the water mains, and those we are putting in new water mains on both sides of the street, so we can serve each of the sides of the street with new pipes and larger pipes. We have Eversource has been restoring the gas services. So they had old cast iron gas services. They've been putting in newer services to all of the residents along Somerville Avenue between Prospect and down to Medford Street. And then also RCN, which has the cable, they had one section from Prospect Street to Merriam in Somerville Avenue that was in the way of some of the drainage we needed to put in. So they have relocated that and moved that out of our way. So some of the work is being done by a contractor, Barletta. Some of the work is also being done by the various utilities here as well. So, all right, and what we got here. All right, there we go. So with that, I guess, just back to Jesse here? Okay, great.
So this is just a quick slide to show what the detour looked like from February to about mid-June. And it's really just up here to just issue a sense of gratitude. We are coming into your neighborhood, we are doing construction, we are messing with your daily lives, and we just wanted to, appreciate what we went through and, know how much we appreciate your patience. And we are going to show you our new detour and new work zone. That's going to be Dan.
Just real quickly, why the slide is actually up, reiterating what Jesse said, thank you all for your patience. I know that was a difficult time preventing traffic from continuing eastbound on Somerville Ave. That being said, we heard a lot from the folks in this room, a lot of our constituents. There was a lot of things to improve, and I just want everyone here to know that we're not perfect. We don't think of everything, so any feedback you do have, positive or negative, please share with us. It not only helps us be better at our jobs, but it helps us serve the community better as well. So that being said, the current slide is actually where we're working today. This work zone, as you can see, it's highlighted in orange. That's right in front of what many of you know as the SCAT building, Somerville Media Center. That work zone essentially starts at Prospect Street east to just beyond the mid-block crosswalk that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. This work zone was set up probably about 3 weeks ago. It was June 24th, if I'm not mistaken. So we've been there for about 3 weeks. The purpose of this work zone, unlike Union Square, is strictly putting in just one box culvert in a linear path. While that sounds easy, you're trying to fit essentially a mega structure in and around existing utilities. Some can be moved, some can't. So there's a lot of logistical issues with getting each of these sections in the ground. Granted, the size of these sections of box culvert are big enough to the point where we actually needed a crane to pick these and install them in the ground. Not only is it a drainage project, but it's a massive excavation project. As you can imagine, in order to fit a giant rectangle on the ground, you have to take a lot of dirt out. How do you do that on a very congested street? So with our work zone, back one. Yep, there we go, thank you. During the daytime, going back to my excavation thought, trying to remove all that material with traffic, how do you do it? How do you do it safely? And how do you do it so you don't impact the neighborhood and the businesses and the constituents more so than we already have? What we decided during design was to allow Barletta, our contractor, to occupy an additional lane. So this work zone takes up 2 lanes of traffic. Obviously, 14-foot wide box culvert. We're just about at 22 feet wide. We want to maintain traffic as best we can, so we all decided, it was decided during design that during the daytime, between 6:30 a.m. and 4 o'clock p.m., contractor actually gets to occupy the 3rd lane of traffic. So that's 3 out of 4 we're taking up during the day. And mind you, these are only business hours. Knowing people, coming home from work, going to work, you have your morning rush hour, your afternoon rush hour. We wanted to try to open the road back up to have 2-way traffic outside of those working hours. So far, it's been okay. I know traffic is a constant problem that we try to mitigate. But by and large, I think, with safety at the forefront of our minds, this was the best possible way to try to get this work accomplished in a timely fashion. So that being said, we'll be working in this work area for another month or 2, and we'll actually be transitioning just adjacent to the west, really between Stone Ave and the plaza. Another, same exact situation. We have this box culvert to install in a linear path. A lot of underground utilities make it challenging. The good thing about the upcoming work in stage 1C that you see in front of you, the traffic impacts are the same. So between now and the next few months, the condition we have currently is going to stay the same and it won't be changing. again, this work, although it does abut the plaza will be open as usual. And as always, we don't want to restrict access for anyone while this work's going on. And going into these, I know I've talked about traffic impacts, and I'm sure many of you take public transit. Sure.
The traffic pattern will remain the same here between the detour that we're currently experiencing?
Yes. Yep.
So the 3 lanes of Somerville Ave will be occupied between 6:30 and 4
Yes.
and unpassable by vehicles?
For those 3 lanes, yes. However, the 4th lane will be a one-way direction heading west towards Union Square during those hours,
Like this now.
just like it is now. The reason for that, we want to always maintain access for emergency vehicles and emergency services. Knowing we're here in this building, a lot of those vehicles are here. And for any points west, we want to make sure that these emergency services can go that way without running into any issues. Yes.
What are you doing to mitigate the businesses? I actually visit heavy sushi every day. He said that lunchtime he actually had to keep that radio because there's such vibration. But for 3 months, heavy sushi is going to be virtually never can keep their lunch there.
I will say the heavy vibration that was felt was only temporary.
He lost customers. People left.
Yes, and that's not what we want. So through our communications department, with Jesse's help, we try to get this information out to these businesses as early as we can and as confidently as we can to make sure they understand the work that's going to happen.
Are you eating there?
I actually went there for lunch today.
We are.
I'm just saying that, like what they need is, all the businesses in the square, they need seats, people in their seats, and.
Sure, and if I can answer this as best I can, right? So that the heavy vibration that was felt, that, as you say, caused people to leave the restaurant, that vibration was the result of one facet of the work, which has since been completed. So we don't expect that to continue to happen. That ended roughly a week ago. That being said, we want to support Union Square and Union Square businesses as much as possible. So we ourselves on the city, we visit these restaurants to show support during this process, knowing that there may be some negative impacts for these businesses while construction's happening. So that being said, Jesse will get into some more information for you soon in our presentation about how we best try to mitigate any sort of issue or impact to businesses. So if you have any more questions, I would just kindly ask. Once Jesse gives you a bit more information, if there's anything else we can answer, we'd be more than happy to. Upcoming work, so I was talking about traffic, and our next slide actually shows what our traffic impacts are. We have 2 separate graphics, one for vehicles and bicyclists, and another for buses. So this one in front of you is the current vehicle detour that's going to be in place through the next phase, stage 1C. That was the previous slide. What this detour essentially means is with our one-way traffic heading westbound between 6:30 a.m. and 4 o'clock p.m., any eastbound traffic, we're essentially detouring them southbound on Webster Ave, and then northbound on Prospect Street to continue on to whatever destination they were going. One thing that we've noticed just within the first week and a half of setting up this detour at the end of June, at the intersection of Prospect, Webster, and Concord, we were getting a lot of traffic buildup, a lot of congestion in the intersection itself, a lot of green light phases, coming and going without traffic moving. Luckily, we have a great city police department with a lot of great detail officers who understand the challenges that we face. We work with all these detail officers and explain essentially what we want them to do. We stage details at these locations. Should traffic get backed up, they have the ability to wave traffic through and try to mitigate any sort of congestion. So this, like I said, this detour will be in effect through September, early October, before we move on. The next slide is our transit detour. So this primarily focuses on the MBTA and the four bus services they offered that would normally pass through Union Square heading eastbound. Again, given the nature of the work, the nature of our work zone setup, and our detour, the buses follow the same route, and we only have one bus stop that was impacted by this. So that one bus stop, which was opposite the plaza, if many of you are familiar with Mike's Auto, almost to the west of EB Sushi, that one bus stop was the only one we had to close, luckily. So what we ended up doing in communication with the T and in coordination with their bus operations was taking an existing bus stop on Prospect Street and just simply relocating it. This map is important in getting out to the public. You know, the T sent out their notifications. They've posted signs in and around the area, as well as us. But upwards of 500 to 1,000 people use this one bus stop every day. So this was an important one that we wanted to include, and we wanted to highlight on our detour map for anyone who uses this one particular stop. It services I believe it's the 85 outbound, the 86 outbound, the 91 outbound, and the 87 inbound. That's a lot. So we want to make sure that we try to keep it as simple as possible and convey our message as clear as possible, so that there's no impacts to folks who are show up to a bus stop that's been closed and wonder what's going on, when is the bus going to come. The T actually preferred to run this detour route. Despite our working hour limitations, they're running this detour route 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, again, just for simplicity. We don't want to create any confusion or any sort of misconception about, is there a bus coming at 7 o'clock p.m.? What if it's 4:01? Our work is over, the detour is over, is a bus going to come? So luckily the T said, you know what, let's run this detour route 24 hours a day for as long as it takes, just so that there's no sudden changes and it's predictable. So, like I said, this will be in place for a couple months. And then I want to get into future work. This work zone you see in front of you, which we hope to have, get into and set up this work zone this fall. One of the biggest challenges, and it's listed as future, one of the biggest challenges we have, and thank you to our council for... Can you just explain where that is? Oh, sure, sorry. This work zone, again, is just shifted again one more time to the left. It's right in front of Stone Ave. And we hope to get there this fall. Really, it's Stone Avenue is in between the plaza and Union Square. It's a small side street here, so if you look at the map, thank you. If you look at the map, the left limit is Union Square. The right limit is the start of the plaza. So in between those two locations is that work zone. What this work zone will entail is essentially closing access to Stone Ave at that particular location. One thing we plan to do is detour any Stone Ave residents up Warren Ave and temporarily make Stone a two-way street. We'll have some parking limitations, obviously, but we don't want to prevent people from getting home or leaving from work in the morning. So there's a lot of, not so much detouring, but it won't be easily, it won't be accessible when this work's happening. One of the biggest questions that I'm sure many of you have is, when will this work happen? Like I said earlier, we anticipate it happening early fall. One of the biggest challenges we face with starting this work zone in particular is there's an existing underground electric duct bank. And again, I started to say thank you to the council for understanding that when this project was designed, we'd be working west to east in a linear fashion. There's an existing duct bank in the ground that Eversource Electric owns that's preventing us from getting into this work area. Hence why we're currently in stage 1D and not 1B. So given the nature of this conflict, in order to keep the project going and in order to really try to minimize any delay costs, we actually jumped ahead to the corner of Prospect Street and we're now working back towards Union in hopes that this one electrical duct bank can get resolved. We've been contacting Eversource Electric for almost 2 years now about getting this conflict taken care of. I think as of late, we've made some progress in getting Eversource to the table. Thank you. So hopefully, like I said, come this fall, we'll be here.
Actually, can we hold off questions to the end, and we will?
We all have
Well,
questions
yeah.
on that one.
I mean, I think that there's some timeline questions about this particular section of detours
Sure.
and how it's gonna impact the,
Yeah, let's,
exactly right.
let's just, can we just hold until the end, and we'll,
like,
and we have a few more
an
slides.
hour from now?
No, there's a few more slides.
Okay.
5 minutes.
All right.
Thank you.
Mine is not business related, you still want to hold that off?
Hmm?
You want to hold all questions off, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
we just hold all
Okay.
those to the end, and then
All
we'll
right.
just quickly get through. So this slide is our Loyal to Local. This is our campaign that we are running to support businesses during construction. You may have seen, if you use Instagram or social media, you'll see the hashtag, and also the hashtag Love Union Square, which is Union Square Main Street's hashtag to support Union Square businesses. The picture on the left is actually one of our VMS boards, and that feedback to change it to show support to businesses actually came out of the last meeting we had in October, where we got the feedback that, we had a message that basically just said, stay out of Union Square for 3 years. I mean, not exactly that, but that was the message people were receiving. So the following day, we went and talked to them, to Barletta, and they actually were able to update it to show more support to the businesses. And trying to explain to someone you have to use the number 2 instead of the word 2 was a nice conversation I had to have. So we have VMS boards, we have our banners, and we also have the blue banners that are on the fences. Next slide, Jim. So we also are, it's important that we're getting this information out. So as much as we're doing community meeting now, we also have our construction newsletter that comes out every Friday. We do our CTY call to announce, a new detour pattern. We would do a CTY call for that. We also, social media, the city's Facebook page. You can sign up for the newsletter if you email construction@somervilleavenue.gov. We also have a targeted outreach. We talk to the schools. We have our internal language liaison through Summer Viva. We talk to Nina at the Art Council, talking about events. We talk to the Bike Council about how it's going to impact them. We talk to the MBTA. We also talk about, events. It's important, Fluff is upcoming. We want to make sure that we can accommodate them so they can have a great event for Union Square Main Streets. We also do door-to-door outreach. I went to Ebby Sushi today because I wanted to talk to Jose about what happened last week when they lost power because of the rain. I'm down in Union Square many times a week, and I go door to door and just kind of check in on the businesses. Just want to make sure they understand what's happening and also how we can support them during this. We also have conversations with economic development to make sure they're aware if there's anything they can offer them. Next slide. All right, you guys waited, and thank you for that. We're going to do a little question and answer round. All I ask is that you just say your name, or if you represent a business, say your name and your business, and we'll go through me. Mr. Scott, would you like to ask first?
So just on, particularly about phase 1 Charlie and 1 Bravo coming up, I would love to know to hear the timelines, projected timelines of both of those, and I want some clarity, if you could, on the crosswalk access, especially to the north across the Somerville Avenue Street stretch there. Because right now the remainder from the one out with the big closure, there's still not crosswalk access directly, basically from the south side of the square to the north side, unless you're going around these spots and Savings Bank or to the big block crosswalk. And that's impacting a lot of businesses who have foot traffic from the north side. So first, is that crosswalk that's depicted there as going through the yellow hash mark zone, is that going to be closed during that period from now until when stage 1B finishes up?
So that crosswalk, we wanted that crosswalk in there when we get to this stage. Given that we just finished up Union Square, obviously we had to take that crosswalk out of service while we were working, and to reopen traffic, with the current lanes we have. To try to put a crosswalk at that location at this time would be nearly impossible, only because we have a long circuitous crosswalk around a work zone. When we finish up, and if we start this work zone, and we're able to tie back into what we have set up today at Union Square, we're gonna do everything we can possible to try to get back as many crosswalks as we can. We've identified the same issue that, yeah, it's very tough to get from north of Union Square south with, again, the circuitous route we have currently. So it's something we do think about very often. We actually had a meeting this morning about adding a crosswalk from the Brazilian market at the corner of Stone Ave, south across the street, just to try to provide that service and not have people have to walk essentially from Prospect all the way up to Citizens Bank to cross the street. So again, hopefully when we start this work, the timeline for this, we're hoping it's in mid to late September, early October, all dependent on this one Eversource duct bank, which if it does get resolved, and we're in here, you know, we'll have the mid-block crossing back. We can look into possibly taking some of the Jersey barriers we have set up in Union Square and trying to adjust those as the current Union Square work zone shrinks.
All right, let me try to ask the question maybe a little different way then. So the current closure that's in the middle of that Bow Street, Somerville Ave junction there is going to remain until 1B is finished.
A good part of the work zone set up today is, if you don't mind, apologies, it's up to this portion here.
Yes.
So this is already encompassed in that work zone.
Yeah.
To answer your question, that crosswalk won't be available until we can actually make some progress, shrink that closer east towards Stone, and then safely be able to put that back.
Okay.
So
So we're
unfortunately,
talking winter.
November-ish?
I'd say the end of October, early November. You know, one of the challenges we face when these two work zones meet is tying that box culvert in. If we can do that and we backfill, we'll be able to pave and then put the sidewalk back.
So then the other question I had was, when moving from 1C to 1B, so once 1C is completed, we're gonna have two-way traffic restored through the Somerville Avenue stretch, correct?
Essentially, yeah.
And-
It's going to be one lane each direction though. But it'll be two-way traffic, yes.
And that is projected to be in September, you say?
Yes.
Okay.
Jessica?
My name's Jessica Eshelman. I'm with Union Square Main Street, so the business interests are very, very near and dear to our hearts, so thank you for your comment. Indeed, businesses are struggling not only from vibration, but construction vehicles taking on street parking and other complications, so thank you again. My first question relates to the timeline. I'm trying to understand if Eversource needs to remove their duct from the 1B area, are they able to handle that work? Will it require road closures for them to remove the duct while you guys are working on 1C and D?
It won't require a full road closure. We'll still be able to maintain at least one-way traffic during the daytime. But a lot of their work, knowing the constraints of where these cables need to go versus where they are now, they're along the edge of the southern lane of Somerville Ave. We've asked Eversource, and we've stated to Eversource that they need to do this work at night to limit any impacts to the traffic we already see today. So we're fortunately still waiting for that to happen. But knowing how much work they do have, they have 3 circuits they need to relocate, which we just found out the other day. To try to fit them in during the daytime in conjunction with the work Barlett is doing is almost impossible. So while the road doesn't need to be closed, we have stated to Eversource that this work needs to happen at night.
Stone Ave, 1 lane of traffic day and night, even though the night work is happening at night? Is that correct? Well, Eversource is removing the dock?
Let me back up.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Their work needs to happen before we get to this work zone here on the screen.
Got that.
Traffic, the lanes won't be impacted overnight for Eversource's work. There may be a lane shift. They'll have detail officers should they need to park a vehicle, at a manhole. But traffic will be maintained at night.
But going opposite directions, both ways?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you all for the presentation, I appreciate the detail. So I always think it's good to give people like bad news well in advance. So my understanding is that the intersection of Prospect and Somerville, way after all this is done, kind of the next step, is gonna be potentially extremely disruptive. Can you just give us what you know about that at this point?
We do know that it's going to be extremely disruptive. We've actually, what was originally designed, there were a couple different ideas, I think one of them being a rotary, if I'm not mistaken, almost a mini roundabout. But given the complications we have in this work zone that we haven't yet gotten to, by jumping ahead to Prospect Street, we actually took a good portion of that work zone into stage 1D that we're working on now. Eventually what that work zone will mean at that intersection with Prospect and Somerville Ave is any southbound traffic on Washington Street coming down to Somerville Ave won't be able to make that maneuver anymore. We will have to detour any Washington Street southbound traffic down Medford and then westbound on Somerville Ave. Similarly, coming up Prospect Street, you won't be able to continue onto Washington as well as we cross Prospect. So depending on the route, we'll have opposite traffic in heading west and heading east from Prospect. It's not ideal. It's a very tough situation, especially for you all here, probably more so than for us. But by kind of taking on some of that work zone now, our hope and our goal is to try to minimize the duration of that work when we get there.
But one thing to note is that the plaza will still be available. You'll still be able to go down that part of Washington Street into the plaza, but just when you exit, you won't be able to make a right into our work zone. So it'll be Jersey barricading you, but you'll still be able to use the plaza for farmer's market or independent.
So I mean, just to add to that, my sense is a huge amount of that traffic is actually regional. And, maybe I'm just being optimistic here, but some of these detours are actually great for the residents because it gets the traffic out of there. It's a pain when you have to drive it, but in general, it's wonderful to have Somerville Ave free of cars. I'm hopeful that there's some aspect of that, and do you have any sense on how long that part will take? Is that a year, is that 3 months?
This is our summer move.
Yeah, I was going to say about 3 months. Rachel says 4, so.
4 months, yeah. Can I just say something?
Sure, please come on up.
So what we're doing out here is kind of the infrastructure equivalent of open heart surgery here. And at Prospect Street, we're dealing with all the vital organs here. We have a major 36-inch diameter gas mains. Now most gas pipes are very small. These are huge that run through there, and we have to slip our box underneath it. And then next to it, we got these transmission lines from Eversource that come over from the Mystic Station over by the casino, and they provide power in the area. Those, we have to support those up in the air while we slide this box underneath, and then we have some other utilities there in that location as well. So this is kind of like, we had like a big area of open heart surgery up in the middle of the square, but this is like one of the most delicate ones there. We have to do this, we need to just do this very deliberately and not too fast, because we have to make sure we support all of these utilities while we're sliding the box underneath it.
So are you able to force the utilities to stop having the double telephone poles? I mean, if you go down Somerville Avenue, you can look at like
So-
it's a nightmare of an infrastructure.
I personally agree.
Allison Schultz from the Brick Bob Marcus Building.
Allison, thank you for the question. Actually, I live on a street that has 5 double utilities I personally have been fighting with Eversource to try and have them removed. We, for this project, you know, it's not something we're focused on, but in general, you can report in the 311, and then the DPW commissioner will actually follow up on it for you. So if you are seeing some around Fitchburg Street,
Well, I'm
please.
seeing them all down Somerville Avenue. I walk there all the time and, you know, I mean, you
So
just see,
which part of Somerville Ave?
between here and Target.
Yeah?
Yep.
Oh.
I mean, you look across from the police station, there's one that's sort of at this angle, double.
Oh, on
you know.
Miriam, yeah. So, the ones that are actually on Somerville Ave, you know, as we do a new streetscape, those will be removed and we'll have new poles.
They're not
Can you
getting
circle
buried?
back to the local, loyal to local? Do you have metrics on whether the program's successful? Like what do you actually, how much have the businesses?
The metrics for loyal to local,
Yeah, I mean, like you have this program happening, it's with social media, but is anybody actually collecting data on whether it's being successful?
have you gone to any local businesses and supported them?
I go to local businesses all the time. I shop at Capone's, I shop at Reliable. I'm actually concerned that Reliable's gonna lose their parking lot with the street closure.
So, I mean,
And there's no on-street parking. I mean, it's like amazing, especially if you have a store with perishable groceries. I wonder how much seafood Ebbie's throwing out, like, on a daily basis, because, you know, seafood has to be fresh.
sure.
And if there aren't people in the seats, I mean, it's impossible. If a place is busy on the weekend, if you're a restaurant, that's not gonna be enough to keep you in business. If you have to have people in there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
Mhm.
in addition to the weekend. 'Cause
So Allison, I totally appreciate that, and you were probably a resident for many years, and you.
30?
30, and you understand the importance of local businesses. I think our campaign is actually reaching out to a lot of people who may be newer to Somerville and may not think of, you know, let me go to Eddie Sushi for lunch, I've never been there before, or a new cafe like Vinyl Bakery just opened, you should check them out. I think the campaign has helped get the word out about places that are being affected by construction. I don't have exact data or metrics showing exactly how much they have helped.
So, I mean, I know Ball Square and people in McGowan Square, they've actually, businesses themselves have organized programs, like, you know, to bar hop and like at Daddy Jones, you know, like that they've been having evening socials, but how much, other than like the, putting out like the signboards, what other initiatives are the city doing in terms of events, like you talked about, the city's talked to the Arts Council, or they've talked to the bicycle groups, but like, are you having like tonight's night to go to Gracie's Ice Cream? I mean, what other, I mean,
So-
it seems
sure.
to me that having a hashtag is not enough.
So there are events that have been planned around it. There's one at Winter Hill Brewing, I think it's this Saturday. So there are events that are happening in construction areas through the Economic Development Team, through the Arts Council to help support businesses. You know, Fluff Fest is coming up, it's a huge event for Union Square. So I mean, I know you think a hashtag doesn't help, I think, you know, anything helps get the word out.
I just said, not that it didn't help it, I just said it's not enough. It's sort of a passive, you know,
Yeah.
rather than an active.
Sure.
And that's why I was asking about
So we
when you're
do have
collecting
economic development
statistics.
team that, you know, offers support if a business calls in directly and says, you know, we're really struggling right now, what can we do? And they have, you know, various methods to do that. And I can touch base with you after this if you want to get more information on that. Any other questions? Mary Jo?
I just want to make sure I understand. So I know you said there will be communication to the abutters, and you gave Stone Ave as an example. I thought I heard you say Warren Ave will be temporarily made a two-way.
No, so Stone Ave, we made a two-way, so right now, if you're coming down Columbus, you can't make a right onto Stone Ave.
All right,
For this work zone, we will make it two-way, but you won't be able to exit onto Somerville Ave. So basically,
Dead end.
yeah, so
For the
basically it's a
residents to be
two-way
able
to
to
get
get in and
into it.
okay.
So it'll only really be people who are going,
So Warren is having no change to its
No change for
pattern
Warren Ave,
because
no.
it's all.
Warren's
Okay.
already two-way.
Oh, I didn't think Warren was two-way.
no. Yeah, Warren Ave currently is two-way.
I'm mixing my streets up, my apologies.
Any other questions?
Just a quick, so the prospect work, we anticipate then to be, that's Mikey, I guess, that starts November?
No, so what Rachel was talking about is gonna be next summer, because one of the main issues is the gas main that she was addressing, is that it has to kind of be at its lowest for us to actually do our work. So it's a high pressure gas, so you can't do it in winter because, it's full.
Yeah.
So during the summer, probably May to August is at its minimum. And that's when we expect to really get in there.
Okay,
So that time frame is low peak usage for gas.
Right.
So once we get through 1B, 1C, we'll work our way back, 1B, 1C, 1B. The last winter, we went through the winter in Union Square. Does that mean that we're going to basically leapfrog Prospect and be working through the winter down near Milton Place?
Yes.
Making our way further towards Target?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then come back to the Prospect Somerville Avenue intersection during the summer.
In the summer.
Yeah. And there'll be many more meetings about this. There'll be, sign up for our construction newsletter. We want to be as transparent and available to communicate this to you as much as possible. So this is our second of many meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so first, thank you for putting this together. This is really useful and valuable information. I don't live in Union Square, but it seems to me that things are actually working because, and then you keep doing this. I've been to, your previous meeting, but I'm increasingly always disappointed with the turnout, when I come here and then I'm looking at the proportion of people that will be impacted. So I feel like you guys have it all together, but, just more like a comment that reach out more once you see that you're increasing, in capacity in terms of complexity of the project. Try as much as possible to reach out, because the more people know, the more, they will not interrupt the project.
And we also are, as Will said, we also are filming this tonight. Hi, Bill. So this will be on the city's cable channel, and hopefully your networks can also share it to get the word out of this meeting we're having right now in real time.
We at Brick Bottom got calls from Eversource today about 1:10 saying they were going to shut the electricity down in that neighborhood for an hour because they had some very serious repairs to do and they were afraid that their workers would get electrocuted or something. Is that something to do with Union Square?
So you're saying you got a call from Eversource saying they had to shut down the power for an hour.
Yeah.
That is far outside our work zone, so I would not say it's related to us. But your power's not working?
No, it was just shut for an hour.
Okay.
They said they were going to shut it for an hour, and I wasn't there, and I spoke to a friend later, and they said it was actually less than an hour, but it was very serious, and they were doing it to protect their workers. I don't know what it was.
I will say that Brick Bottom is outside of our scope of
Okay.
work,
You said something, yeah.
so that doesn't sound like it would be related to us. It sounded more like it could be related to the recent weather we had and mixing water and electrical cables, so that helps.
Kate?
Kate Stinchcomb, Union Square Main Streets. Can you just clarify the timeline for the different phases of the project for me?
Sure. So right now, we are in 1D, and just so everyone knows, so when the big hole is 1A, Stone Ave is 1B, the left side of the plaza is 1C, we're currently in 1D, and then eventually we'll hit 1E. So we're in 1D, starting at the SMC building, moving west. We've just crossed the mid-block crossing, and we're going to continue on to the other half of the plaza. So I would expect that to be 2 months.
2 months from today.
Yeah.
So July, August, September. So then 1C will take how long?
That is 1C. So we've actually already gone out of 1D.
Oh, great.
We're we're mid. We're in the mid-block crossing, so we still have part of it in 1D, but we're moving on to part of 1C right now.
So when do you feel like 1D will be completed?
Sweet.
So again, as Jesse said, we're well into 1B, just getting nearly into 1C. What we plan to do is have both of those work zones paved, at least with one layer of asphalt going into this winter, which would effectively open up that portion of road. We expect that to happen again sometime late September, early October.
So 1D will be completed by late September, early October.
1B and 1C,
Okay, both.
yes.
So then what is the timeline for for phase B?
That's a little bit harder to answer only because of the conflict we have with Eversource and the lack of responsiveness we've been getting lately. It's one of the biggest variables we have on this job, so it's difficult to answer that with anything over 90% certainty. But our goal is to, if that conflict gets resolved, we'll be moving right into 1B and staying there really through 2020 in the early spring, or excuse me, late winter. If we're able to finish 1B in late winter, after 1C and D are already done, and it's before the time frame we can get into Prospect Street, again, based on those two gas mains that are present, we'd essentially hopscotch over Prospect Street, work as much as we can until the time allows us to get back to Prospect, in which we start that work.
So what is the total anticipated time that you expect spending on 1B?
1B, I would expect roughly 3 months.
3 months. Cool.
What we can do and what we plan to do is, again, we want to have another one of these this fall, a similar type of community meeting, and our hope and our goal is to be able to speak more accurately to that question. So something we want to inform people of, and at this time it's a little bit harder to answer. We hope in just a few months here, the answer to that question will be a lot more clear. Jessica?
Jessica Unions for Main Streets. On the topic of timelines and getting the word out, I'm curious about the timing of the construction e-newsletter that goes out. We're serving business audiences, so we're talking with folks who are perhaps using email at a different rate than others, but that's a time of the day where people aren't really paying attention to their inbox, and by the time they get back to it, either the weekend has happened and then this information gets buried. That's some of the feedback I've been receiving, and I'm curious if there's a rationale behind that.
So the rationale is I gather information from each project that's included in the newsletter throughout the week. So typically, for example, for this project, we have a Tuesday meeting, so I get the look ahead for what is planned for the following week, Tuesday mornings. But I have to check in again with the folks on Thursday and as well Friday, because what we had talked about on Tuesday either has changed drastically, or we're still kind of filling in some of the variables that I didn't have before. So part of the challenge is that just the nature of construction is so dynamic that to even give you a look ahead of 3 days or potentially a week is difficult. So I try to give myself the week to collect information, make it as accurate as possible, and put that all together. So that takes me about until noon on Friday. So if you're thinking the 4 p.m. is a tough time, and maybe earlier in the day on Friday, that's something that could be considered, but.
That would be helpful because small businesses need to make changes to their staff schedule, or if there's a detour, they need to let people who have reservations know about. They're not finding that they have enough time if something gets announced on a Friday to be in effect on Monday, which has happened a couple of times. We're hearing struggles with just communicating that to their staff.
Okay, sure. And perhaps those are things also then, perhaps the newsletter is not the channel for us to be addressing those. We can look at other ways to connect directly with those businesses on these particular concerns.
That would be great.
Perhaps we could even almost segregate Union Square in itself and have a separate newsletter for the folks here, if you think that would help. Just to make sure that information's in the forefront.
Are you going to write it?
All right, absolutely. But again, it's not our goal to try to give any information last minute. As Erica said, sometimes, things change, weather, unknown circumstances underground, hard to see in advance. So anytime we have information, we review it. If it's something we want to approve, we want to let you know almost immediately after. Again, it's difficult to try to get too far ahead of ourselves and give you incorrect information that perhaps won't come to fruition. We want to avoid any confusion by having, to issue any sort of notification several times over just because things have changed. So
Or issue early and have to cancel it because it changed.
So for instance, I think 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a notification went out on a Friday to close the Bow Street turnaround for the following Monday. I believe we got 1.5 inches of rain in about half an hour over the weekend. When the crews came in Monday morning, all their work zones were completely flooded, along with half of Union Square. So knowing that this work was put out there for the public to read and hopefully understand, come Monday, it completely changed, and unfortunately we couldn't start that work until we started cleaning up the work zones and cleaning up the rest of Somerville Ave and trying to remove as much flooding as possible. It's unfortunate, and we don't like to do that, and give out any information that doesn't come true. It's
And
not.
I'd like to just offer, though, I understand that you're concerned about over too many confusing, conflicting messages, but folks were like, isn't there supposed to be a detour today? I'm not seeing the detour, like looking for it, so a message to say whether postponed this work, I think in that case
Sure.
would have been
And we
helpful.
can definitely do that going forward.
Thank you so much. And I have
Yeah,
one
absolutely.
final clarifying question. Much earlier in the project you were talking about, the part of this project we're all so excited about coming eventually, which is the streetscape enhancements. And I just want to clarify, what section of Somerville Ave will be seeing streetscape enhancements?
All of it will be. Certain areas are, how do I put this? There's more focus on Somerville Ave, East Prospect Street. We'll still have streetscape, new sidewalks, dedicated bike lanes west of Prospect Street, closer to Union Square. But knowing that there's an overall city goal to look into plaza redesign. We have some other projects going on Washington Street. So we didn't want to invest all this money to have it ripped up in a year from now. So as that chart shows you, there's some lighter touches west of Prospect Street, which it won't include the same level, the same enhancements that east of Prospect Street will. So
Prospect and Metro.
Yes.
I haven't heard any talk as of late. When are the buildings coming down from Prospect Street, Dunkin' Donuts to Webster Ave with pizza places? I heard a number of years ago that whole thing was going to go. Is that still underway, or is that not going to happen?
So that, you're basically talking about the redevelopment of Somerville
Yeah, there's going to be a couple of big
Union Square.
buildings with retail
Yep.
and high-rise, I heard, and parking.
So this is, very big project, basically, redeveloping the whole neighborhood. And it's gone through a lot of process, going through planning, going through zoning, going through a community development, making sure they, are giving back to the community they're entering to basically change. Nothing has fully been approved yet. It is still with the planning board. You could definitely talk to your city councilors, I can give you a little more information, but I would say right now, not to expect anything in the next 6 months or so.
Oh, sorry, no, for that whole block,
Oh, for that block?
nothing
Yeah,
is even
yeah.
proposed. It's part of the,
Oh, you said the-
multi-year plan.
Is it 5 years away, 6 years away, 10 years away?
For the block, with which
For the whole
block?
block. It's right where Prospect.
With Eddie and Dunkin' Donuts.
It's
Oh.
Dunkin' Donuts parking lot to Webster Ave where the pizza place is. Everything there.
Yeah,
The Metro PCS, the Western Union, and the convenience
Mhm.
store, and Dunkin'
Yeah.
Donuts,
I
and all that.
don't have a timeline for that.
Again, that development is separate from this project.
Yeah, it just shares a corridor.
So even though it's right next to each other, we actually don't have any
But
involvement.
none of that can happen until you guys are finished what you're doing, right?
Correct. No, we want to upgrade our utilities so that we can support future development.
Any other questions?
I have a thought, and I don't, Eric is probably gonna go on. And I don't know if this is doable or not, but years back, Communications Department had a cable show, and I forget what the heck they called it, but it was someone from Communications and someone from the Chamber of Commerce, who, I think they did it monthly. And they went into different businesses, and they sat down, and they talked, and then they let the proprietor kind of share with the community what their business was about. Sometimes it was a guitar store, a lot of times it was a restaurant. I'm wondering if it would be possible to do a mini version of that, like our own Phantom Gourmet type of show. On the weekend, I always watch Phantom Gourmet. It's a ton of clips of all different restaurants, and my husband and I always go to these places. But could we do possibly a mini version for Union Square and for Ball Square? So that, and then when the clip is created, share it with all of us, so then, you know, we can share it with the world too, and it would be work, but, you know, it would help to remind everybody who lives in our community that these businesses exist and they're hurting right now. Like, I had an event and I had it in Ball Square at an establishment that I haven't gone to in years, quite honestly, but I felt horribly for these businesses. And I said to people at the beginning of my event, I'm here because you've got to be reminded these places exist. Lindell's just announced a really good sale happening for the rest of the summer, and I'm thinking, Lindell's must be hurting too. So if you could do something possibly like that for Union Square, and then also do it afterwards for Ball Square, and then,
Right, in districts affected by
yeah.
construction.
I mean, Union Square's got a lot more establishments than Ball Square does, so you may have to do Union Square in two versions, but if you could do like mini, not the show that they used to do was like a half-hour show of one place or two places.
Yeah.
I'm talking like do an hour show of like
Oh,
20
yeah.
places.
No, it sounds really
You know,
fun.
And then we can help share the loyal to local, and this is what
Yeah.
is here.
Well, I'd love to hear your reply to that before.
Oh, no, I think it sounds super fun, and I'm happy to investigate further with economic development and city cable and Somerville Media Center, and I'm sure see what the thoughts are.
That's exciting, however USMS can assist. And if it's okay, Jesse, if I can just share a bullet list of the things USMS, Union Square Main Streets, has been doing to spotlight the businesses. I didn't want to offer it earlier since this is obviously the city sharing its information. But you may have seen the flyers that are out throughout the district. Hem your pants in Union Square, get your bangs trimmed in Union Square, see a show in Union Square, shop the Glow to find a new flavor. That is all targeted at thinking about people who might be coming to us not by vehicle, by foot, by scooter, by bike. We're really excited about this brand new Shop the Square Saturdays campaign that launched last Saturday, where 2,000 to 3,000 people come to the farmers market every Saturday morning. We have 20 businesses, and I'm sure this list will grow. You get your sticker, it's kind of like the I voted sticker. You wear it all day long, and it has, for this Saturday, it has our logo with a carrot from the farmers market. 20 businesses will give you 10% off if you are wearing that sticker for the entire Saturday. So it can be 11:30 p.m. You go into Brass Union and get a good deal. We have been telling the featured business stories in our newsletters, where we interviewed Jose just for our last edition, and these are letters that are being authored by the business owners to tell their personal story. If we could animate those into 3D, Erica, that would bring the story to life in a whole new way. And then the last one that we've been cooking up is we received a grant from the Arts Council to hire an artist who is hand-drawing 100 storefronts in this district, and we are curating maps based on, itineraries based on themes to incentivize people to go out. So the next one we'll be releasing is Lunch Hour in Union Square, and it's really aimed at getting folks at Greentown Labs, Right Hand Robotics, and other places to consider going in and maybe getting their teeth cleaned during their lunch break, getting a workout, not only just getting good eats. So that's a lot of efforts, but more is needed. It's talking to your neighbors, it's you yourself going out, it's us partnering with economic development and Erica's team to bring these stories to life as well.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Hey, Eugene, since we're doing names. This is my first time here. I'm just interested in hearing more about the partnerships with some of the logistics-based elements of visiting Union Square, because I've seen the loyal to love. That's what brought me to this meeting in the first place, actually. So I hate to
It's a walk-up.
burst a bubble, but it does somehow work. My friend Dan and I, we visit like all the towns near, all the squares nearby, right? Davis, Porter, Ball, Union, and some of them have really good partnerships with like get their corporate, like Lyft. You get a free, you get like $10 towards your Lyft ride if you call it from this particular location that has a partnership with the company. So I'm wondering if you guys have the same kinds of things with City Bikes, because I get that it's a citywide partnership with a private corporation, but have you explored like, if you dock a bike here, it's free. If you take a bike from here to dock out, it's free. Because to me, it seems the issue that everyone's facing is traffic. like, you're just not getting people to these businesses. And I know, like, as someone who spends money going to local businesses, I would
Yeah.
go if it was easier to get there. So I just want to know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
what the
really
design program
great
is.
suggestion.
I can, so I'm Courtney Kirk, streetscape and public space planner. I'm sort of the interim blue bike manager for the city right now, and we have installed some construction PSA, well, they're about to roll out construction PSA posters at stations that are close to bridge closures. And we've been talking with, Lyft is the operating company that does all the bike adjusting and maintenance, with doing, possibly coming up with like a ride to to the different squares, like a sort of a bike tour. So there are some things that, we're working on in partnership with economic development and, the Lyft operators to, do more with the bike share that we have in the city and bring people to the squares without a car.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm just curious.
Great question.
Definitely something to keep looking into and see what we can do to.
Yeah, it's, I mean, the blue bike system is great. It's, since Somerville's a smaller, municipality in the grand scheme of things, sometimes we don't always get the cool stuff that
Yeah,
Boston
right.
and Cambridge does.
Any other questions? All right, thank you all for coming tonight. As we said, we will have future meetings, and please make sure if you're not already signed up for our construction newsletter, if you email construction@somerville.ma.gov, you can sign up for it. Also, it's a very easy way to get in touch with the construction team, and we'll see you next time.